Hey guys, hello, welcome to Laboratorio Podcast on Medellin. I'm very pleased to be here. My name is Alejo Lopera, and today we're going to keep talking to these gringos, to these American people who came to Medellin at what point of their lives, and they said, this is so great, I'm going to stay here in Medellin. One of these people is Michael Cooper. I say all the time, Mr. Cooper, but today I'm going to call you Michael.
That's fine.
That's okay. Mr. Cooper, welcome to Medellin.
Thanks, Alejandro. Thanks for the invitation.
So it's 42 years.
42 years.
So
I came in 1982.
1982. Okay,
Right.
so you got to tell me the story. Okay. Why Medellin? I mean, what were you doing in America when you said, like, I'm going to Medellin, I'm going to Colombia?
It happened when I was in the university. I was doing my master's at Ohio State University, and I always knew that I wanted to go abroad to teach. I was teaching at the time. I was teaching at a small country school, a town of 2,000 people. I was a sixth grade teacher, but I said, I want to try this sometime.
Did you have any country in mind?
No,
like, I'm going to go to Japan or?
Everyone thinks they want to go to Europe, and that's what I thought. Europe is where I want to go.
Okay.
But I had a class one night at the university. It was a psychology class, and the professor was talking about taking risks in life.
Oh, okay.
And on my drive back home, which was about an hour drive, I got to thinking, and I thought, I keep saying I want to go overseas to teach, but I'm not doing anything to get to that point. And so I said to myself, I'm going to take that risk.
Okay.
I don't know where I'm going to be next year, but I know I will not be teaching in the United States.
Did you talk it over with your family?
No.
Okay, that was your decision, your call, decision. And that's it.
I'm the oldest of seven. I was the first one to graduate from university. I was living on my own, and I decided this is what I want to do.
But let me make a parenthesis there. I don't know if it's the same as is in Latin America, but when you are the oldest, you normally stick around to help your mom and dad raise the rest of the brothers and sisters.
No, in the States, you lived there for a while when you were in the States. In the States, when you turn 18, you're on your own.
Yeah,
you're
that's
on your
it.
own. You might go back as your parents get older to help them out, but no,
okay.
You don't during that time.
So you said, this is it, I'm going to take a risk.
So I said, I'm going to take that risk. I'm going to look. And so I started searching. At that time, there were there were international school fairs.
Okay.
You could go through to a fair. There were all these international schools there, and they had all of their openings listed on what they were looking for the following school year. So I went to one in Cleveland, Ohio. It was the closest one, and there were probably about 25 international schools. And I was a sixth grade teacher at the time, so I was a primary school teacher. That's what I was looking for. I was getting my master's in guidance and counseling, but I was looking for a teaching position. So I looked through the list, and there were probably about 5 different countries that I could apply to.
Do you remember them?
And I remember one was Bogota, one was Tanzania, Africa, Medellin. One was Europe. I can't remember what part of Europe, and I don't remember the other one.
So there were 2 in Colombia,
There were 2 in
Bogota
Colombia.
and Medellin.
Right.
Okay.
And so during the fair, they would have little sessions where they would be like informational sessions without the interviews. And I went to the informational session, and the one guy from Bogota was the director of the school in Bogota. He started out by saying, if you come to Bogota, plan on getting robbed.
Really? That's what he
And
said?
I thought, okay, this one's off my list.
Of course. Bad publicity from the beginning.
And so I went through the interviews, and I got 2 offers. I got one from Tanzania, Africa, and the other one was from Medellin.
Okay.
And the guy called me from Medellin, and he said, I'm still in the process of interviewing, but I want to offer you the position, but I can't yet until I interview the other people. But be ready to respond.
Okay.
So like the day before he called me, I saw on the news or read in the paper, I can't remember, it said, a university professor in Medellin, Colombia, was assassinated.
Oh.
And I thought,
Yeah, terrible.
so when he called me, he says, okay, I'm ready to offer you the position. Are you ready to come? And I said, well, I have a question for you. I said, I just read this about a teacher. And he said, was it the University of Antioch? And I said, yes. He said, well, these kind of things happen, but they're not really directed, it probably, there was a reason why it happened. He said, but there's still, it's a good offer for you. And
It was a risk, as your teacher said.
Let me think about it. Give me a couple more days. I also got the offer from Tanzania, Africa.
I was going to ask you that.
Yes.
Was that in the picture?
Yes.
Like you
So I had the
thought
two of
maybe?
them.
Okay.
Africa was offering me 3 times the money that I was going to make in
No
Medellin.
way, really?
Yeah.
So it was an easy decision.
No.
I mean, here they're killing people. Over
And
there, three more.
Three
more
times the,
Yeah.
the money. And coming to Medellin, I was going to take a 50% cut in pay from where I was teaching originally in Ohio.
Oh, okay, okay. So you got to tell me what really thrown you here.
So I put on the table the pluses and the minuses and
What were
started
the
looking.
pluses of Medellin at that time?
Medellin, the weather,
Okay, good.
okay,
Yeah.
the scenery, the mountains. Okay?
You didn't know how nice people were, probably.
No, I didn't know that part
Okay, you
yet.
didn't know that part.
And the proximity to the United States.
Okay, it was
because
easier to go to the States from here than from Tanzania.
And like I said, I was the oldest of my family. It was the first one that was going to do anything like this. And so I thought, it's better to be close to home. And the superintendent told me for Medellin, he said, I know the salary sounds low. I said, low? It's 50% less than what I make it. He said, but you'll be able to live a good life. You'll be able to save money and you can travel nationally if you want.
Were they going to pay you in dollars or Colombian pesos?
I got paid, but you did get dollar bonuses every year.
Okay, okay.
And they provided you with housing. They paid for the airline ticket.
Okay.
So you really didn't, you had to pay for your utilities
Yeah.
and your food, and that's pretty much it.
Okay.
Transportation to the school was taken care of. So after a couple of days, I said, okay,
Medellin.
I'll do it. It was a 2-year contract. I said, I'll take a 2-year contract and we'll see what happens.
When you made that decision, did you talk to anybody about that?
No.
Not your family?
No, I told my family I was going to do it.
Did they say, are you crazy?
Of course, because at that time, well, no.
1982, that was a crazy time for Colombia.
But Colombia really didn't make the international news yet.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So my family really didn't know. They just knew that I was going to a foreign country.
Okay, South America.
Yeah, South America. And Americans don't really know much about South America.
Yeah, I know that.
Okay. So I made the decision to come down. So I had a 2-year contract. I was 6th grade teacher for 1 year. And
That was in the Columbus school, right?
At the Columbus school.
Okay.
And during that first year, the guidance position was going to open in the high school. And I had just finished, I had received my diploma for my master's degree right before I came down. So I had my master's degree, and the superintendent knew that. So he called me and he said, this position is going to open. If you're interested, I'd be glad to offer you the guidance position in high school. And so I said, well, let me think about it. I went back a couple of days later and I said, yeah, I'll take the position. He said, well, I really want you for 2 years in that position. So this would be a 3-year contract. And I said, oh, that's okay. I don't mind.
At that time, were you pleased living here? Were you happy?
When you first come down, I think, in my years at the Columbus School, I did a lot of orientation with new teachers. And there's that honeymoon stage. Okay?
Of course. Everything is different.
Yeah, everything's different. Everything is great. Everything's positive and it's
The weather
beautiful.
was amazing.
Yeah. And, you don't really look at going to the bank to get money and you turn your check in. You probably never had to do this. And then you stand in this group of people and you wait for minutes and hours until they call your name. And then you weave your way up to the counter and then you get your money.
Oh, really?
Or when I first got here and had to call my mom to let her know I got here, you call the operator and you say, I'd like to make an international call. They'd ask for the number and they said, when we have an open line, we'll call you.
They will call you?
They will call me. So you had to wait because there were not that many lines that went to...
And sending a letter will be like 3 months until he gets there.
So I waited, that first night I waited 3 hours for them to be able to make my follow-up phone call. Gosh. And look where we are today.
Of course.
Yeah.
Of course. Everything has changed.
Yeah, a lot.
Okay, so you took that position, 3 more years on your contract.
Right.
Happy.
See. Happy
Absolutely.
during that time. Yeah.
Okay.
When I first came down, I lived with 3 other people. That was the condition of the place. Lived with other teachers, and the school paid for it. After my 2 years, 2 of those people decided to go back, and the other one, she decided she would stay. And so she and I got an apartment for just the 2 of us. And then she stayed for 2 more years, and then I was going to be on my own. And so that's when I went to the superintendent and I said, I enjoy my time here. I don't want to have a new roommate that makes me hate it here. And so would you consider giving me an apartment to myself?
Okay.
And so he said, sure. I will
The
do
school
that.
will pay for it.
Yeah, the school paid for me because usually you had to live with at least one other teacher.
Of course, of course. Back in 1982, were there a lot of gringos here?
No, in Colombia, no.
No. It was so you were a rare specimen
You
over
would
there.
walk. I would walk down the street. We would go downtown sometimes for whatever, and I'd be with another American. We'd be walking and talking, and it was sort of like we were Martians from outer space.
Yeah, of
people
course.
would stop and look at us.
And you're very tall. And, okay, but you didn't know any Spanish when you got here.
I didn't know any
really?
Spanish. No.
Wow.
No, I took Spanish in high school because you had to
but
have
like,
you
¿cómo
had to
están?
have and I cheated my way to graduate through the Spanish. So I had nothing. But the school didn't really care because you had to teach in English all the time.
Of course.
You needed Spanish for yourself.
But you have to go to the bank. You have to go to the grocery store.
You have to, when I first came, I lived behind the Éxito on Colombia, like 2 blocks behind it.
All right.
So the Éxito was where I would go.
Okay.
And I had a little pocket dictionary.
Oh,
And
really?
so I had that for like 2 years. And I would go to the grocery store and I would know what I want. And so I would look up the word in English and I would say that word and the lady would look at me like, what are you saying? So then I would show her, this is what I want. And so then she would take me to buy whatever I needed.
Okay.
But that's how I survived.
How long did you teach or did you work at the Columbus
I
School?
worked at the Columbus School for 23 years.
23.
Yeah.
Isn't there like a gym or something that is named after you?
There's a theater, an outdoor
theater.
It's an outdoor theater, an amphitheater.
Okay.
I was the guidance counselor for 9 years, and then I became the high school principal. So I was the high school principal for 13 years. And during that time, the school when I first came was over by the Pablo Tobon, the hospital.
Okay.
In that area.
Now it's in Las Palmas.
Now it's in Las Palmas.
Did you get to work at Las Palmas?
Yes, we did. We moved in 1999, I believe it was. So I was the high school principal up there. And when we got up there, at the private school at that time, everyone wanted their kids to be doctors, lawyers, engineers. That was it. You couldn't think about going into communication, nothing else.
No.
You had to have a professional degree. And
no arts, actors, musicians.
And so I was really a lot more on the cultural side. And so there was a space there that I was perfect for an amphitheater off the side of the high school that overlooked down in the valley, Medellin. And so I asked if we could raise money to be able to build this outdoor theater. And we did. And so what I did was I started on a Friday afternoon. You've seen these things like concerts in the park and different parks in the state. On a Friday afternoon at lunchtime, I would have some type of entertainment for the kids to take their lunch and sit in the amphitheater, watch what's going on, and have their lunch.
But what kind of entertainment?
I had
like a
all
puppet
different
show, whatever?
No, I had all kinds of things. I had a guy that would sing like folk songs.
Okay.
I had. Do you remember and I can't think of his name right now, but the guy that would fly in the air on the material, on the cloth, and he would do the acrobatics up above.
Okay.
I saw him on La Playa one day.
Okay.
Stopped the traffic, and he was up there doing his stuff. And so I stopped him and I asked him. I said, "Would you be able?" So
Would you go there? And
he came and did that because the whole idea was I knew I had students that were also musicians. But they did not want anybody else to know that they were musicians.
I cannot imagine how many people would thank you for that. I mean, people that didn't want to be a lawyer, but they wanted to have more like a theatrical kind of thing, and they remember Mr. Cooper for that.
And so then after a while, I would say, okay, why don't you guys perform the small band that they had organized? So then I was able to get more of the students to participate, and that was the whole idea of that. So when I was leaving the school, the senior class and the alumni decided that they were going to,
of course, they
honor
remember
me and name the theater the Michael J. Cooper Outdoor Theater.
That's a great honor. That's a great honor. So let me go back when you decided to go and be the director of the Colombo Americano, a place that obviously everybody knows, everybody loves. Was it difficult to change that position and become a whole different thing, even though it's in education, but it's a different thing?
I knew the Colombo when I first got here. Like that first week, in Medellin, they had a theater group that was called MELT.
Okay.
Medellin English Language Theater.
Okay.
It was made up of foreigners from all over, including Colombians too, who spoke English. And they would produce English-speaking plays in the city. At that time, your audience was maybe 200, 250 people who spoke English that were interested in going to an English play. And they practiced at the Colombo Americano.
Okay.
So that first week, I think there was the middle of the week, there was a meeting. I went. I was invited to go. I was in theater in the States. I was in theater in Ohio.
You've done theater here, of course, yeah.
And so I went and I got to know the Colombo Americano. At that time, the Colombo was still under the U.S. State Department.
Okay.
Because that's how the Colombo began, under the U.S. State Department. And so that was in 1982. And in 1983, the U.S. government said, okay, we're not doing this anymore. We're pulling out of this project. This project was called Binational Centers, and they had them all over the world. It was Colombia with the U.S. It was Peru with the U.S. It was Germany with the U.S. And so they said, we're pulling out of this. If you want to continue, you need to find the director and go from there. And so that's when they named the director, who was before myself. And so I knew the place. I would go there. After my first 2 years of living behind the Éxito, we moved downtown. I lived on La Playa.
Oh,
I
really?
lived on Palo.
Great place to live.
At that time, it wasn't bad.
I still consider it a great place to live now.
All the movie theaters at that time were there. There were
coffees, everything, theaters, everything.
Yeah, everything. So I would go over there to the library because that's the place that would get newspapers.
Of course.
Okay, they might be a month late, but you but you got a newspaper to look at and read. Anyhow, I knew the place, and after 23 years, the director passed away with cancer, and they were looking for someone, Paul Bardwell, and so they were looking for someone. And 23 years at the school, it was tough. I really liked my time at the school, but during that whole time that I knew the Colombo, I always said, that's a position I would love to have.
Okay.
Because it's education and culture.
Yeah, absolutely.
The Colombo has been known.
Has been known not only for teaching English, but also for the
cinema,
library, the
gallery,
cinema, the
everything.
gallery.
Yeah, everything. And so I said, okay, I'm going to apply for the position, and they did a search, and after a few months, they called me and said, well, I first of all went down for I made the finalists group. There were 3 finalists. I think they said there were something like 21 applicants, and 3 finalists. And so they interviewed those 3, and then about a few weeks later, they called me and said if I wanted, the position was open. I was still at the school, and they said that they would wait for me to finish the school year. And so I started July 1st.
Oh, okay.
And so I finished the school year on January 24th. So I had 1 week to go to try to change the chip in my head.
Yeah, of course.
From 23 years of being a high school principal to being a director of the Colombo.
One of the things that your ideas when you got there, I remember, is that we cannot only have one place downtown, which is a place everybody loved and everybody knew, but you decided to open more places. Like now you guys are in Rio Negro, in El Poblado, in Los Molinos. How did you convince the people that were above you to say, like, we should open more places to people to study English?
I mean, one of the things, Alejandro, you go back, this was in 2005 that I took over at the Colombo. Transportation was becoming a problem in the city.
Yeah.
And so the whole thing was, downtown, if you look at all the Colombos, which were all independent in Colombia, there's 9 of us, our main site is downtown.
Sure.
Some of them, that's the only site they have. But I thought, with the way things are going, people aren't going to want to go downtown all the time. If there is another language institute 2 blocks away from where my house is, I say to myself, well, I know the Colombo's the best, but I don't want to fight that traffic.
Especially downtown.
Yeah. So, and at one point, I know the board of directors were looking to they wanted to open something in Poblado. So I got a call one day from San Fernando Plaza, from the people that were selling property there, and said, Michael, why don't you come? We want to show you something. So we went. I put my boots on because it was a muddy mess. And we walked over, and he showed me what he had. And so I went back to my board, and I said, this is a great opportunity for us. You've always wanted to go to Poblado, but there were a couple of board members that said, yeah, but we wanted a culture building like we have in downtown. And I said, but you have a problem. If we build that, then we also have to build a parking lot to park the cars.
I know.
And I said, if we go to something like this, we have the parking, we have security, because downtown we have security, our own security. We have security, we have parking. That solves two of our biggest problems. So I was able to convince them, okay, let's go for that. And then it just kind of kept going from there. I would the same guy that called me and said, come, I want to show you. Every time he had a new project, he would call me and say, come, I want to show you this. And so from there, we opened up, I believe Molinos was the second one.
That was the third one, actually. After downtown, Poblado.
Okay, downtown Poblado, then Molinos. Then we opened up, it was really kind of a tie between, I can't remember if it was Rio Negro first and then Bello, or Bello and then Rio Negro, because I tried to space it out every 2 years.
It was Bello first and then Rio Negro.
You were part of that whole process.
Of course.
You were a part of that process because you were working with us at that time.
But it didn't stop there, because you also have worked with people in Urabá, which is a very nice thing that you guys did.
Yeah, we had a social project. I started with a social project there, and then we saw that there were more things to do, and so we rented a small house and redid the house. And so we had like 4 classrooms there, and we were there for several years. That place we closed during the pandemic.
Of course. I think it really hit not only you guys, but everybody else,
right,
with in terms of education. But the beautiful thing about your work there is not only based on the education in English, but also the MLK scholarships and all the bands that you have brought from the States.
Right.
So I could say that you have given a lot to Medellin's culture. Wouldn't you say that?
I've tried to bring things to Medellin in the culture area that's different. Mm-hmm. Okay, let me give you an example. Gospel music.
Oh, right, yeah.
Gospel music, live gospel music was never in Medellin before.
We've seen it on TV.
Right, you've seen it on TV, and you've listened to it, but live concerts, no. And one of the biggest ones that we did that I think had the biggest impact was with the AFIT, with the Symphonic Orchestra. Mm-hmm. And I brought down 30 gospel singers, and we did gospel symphony. It came from 3 different universities in the States, 3 different HBCUs, which is historically black universities and colleges. And I asked them to each bring 10 singers. So there were 30 singers. They came from Florida, Texas, and Ohio. We had the orchestra from AFIT. They got together the first day for a rehearsal. And I can remember, the 30 kids that were singing, university students that were singing, they had never sung before together. They all rehearsed their own music. But they sang together, the orchestra was there, and I can just remember the faces of the orchestra people.
Yeah.
Crazy. Their jaws just dropped because they had never heard anything like that. At the Metropolitan Theater, it was the first time an Afro-American or Afro chorus was ever on that stage.
Yeah.
It was a sold-out concert.
Imagine.
And it was a standing ovation at the end of the concert.
Yeah, you have brought a lot of great things for us. Mr. Cooper, unfortunately, we don't have more time. I wish I could talk to you for hours. But now, if anybody wants to know all the services, they should go to the webpage, I guess.
You're right.
ColomboWorld.com.
Right.
Mr. Cooper, many more years for you to stay in the city and of course, to help us grow up with the English and everything. Thank you very much for being here with us. And I hope this is not the last time you come here to Medellin.
Invite me anytime.
Okay, thank you very much. And thank you very much for being with us. Remember, this is Laboratorio Podcast here on Medellin.